Welcome into SEC Primetime Live here on the Voice of College Football. Andrew Miller with Josh Mahler. And joining the program, we got Austin Farmer, who covers the Arkansas Razorbacks for the Hogs on the Hill pod. And Austin, I've already blanked on where we can find your writing just within the 5 minutes. It's not even that long since I asked.
Yeah. You're good. It's bestofarkansassports.com.
Okay, there we go. Check out Austin Works there. Austin's work there. BestArkansasSports.com. We needed to talk about Arkansas. We had to have an Arkansas guest on because it's been a wild day across Arkansas football. Obviously, the Hogs have been in a coaching search for several weeks now since moving on from Sam Pittman. You know, they've gone through, is Bobby Petrino going to be the guy once again? We've had a lot of different names come up throughout this search, and this morning you get the news from Trey Schapp, who covers the Razorbacks for 103.7 The Buzz, saying that Alex Golesh from USF was going to be the next coach. I know that since that point, there's kind of been conflicting reports quite a bit. 247, I think their word is, hey, there's been a contract offered, but nothing official yet in terms of it being approved or being accepted. And I know as of tonight, you have people from the South Florida side of things already contesting that any sort of move is official here. Does certainly seem like Golesh is the leader in the clubhouse, and the job may be his if he wants it. But Austin, just what is the overall feeling right now? What have you heard? I mean, do you think it's going to be Alex Golesh as the next head coach in Fayetteville?
I mean, if I had to put a bet on it, I would probably say yes. But what Trey did is he kind of really pissed some people off on his side uh, of the equation, and it kind of makes sense. He's got one more game left, at least one more game left with South Florida, and he probably wanted to go and talk to his players, and so they didn't have to find out through social media. So I get that, but is that enough to persuade him not to come to Arkansas, especially with some of the figures I've been hearing? I don't think so. But at the same time, I think it was more or less a handshake deal, and Trey kind of just got antsy with it and put it out. But yeah, I think if I had to, I'm not a betting guy. I really suck at betting, so I don't do that a whole lot. But if I were, I would definitely put it on that he's going to be the next head coach at Arkansas.
If he is the guy, what is your feeling on that? Because I know I've seen a lot of different opinions from Arkansas fans on it, and you're going to get that with any coaching search. Everyone's going to have different feelings on candidates because you scrutinize everything you can about these guys because of how big the role is. But where would you land on it if it is Alex Golesh as the next coach?
Yeah, so I like it. I convinced myself like a month ago that he was the guy. I can't say the same for everybody else. There's a lot of guys, a lot of people around Hog Nation that aren't feeling a type of way, and I think that has more to do with how this search went on. We were in the mix for James Franklin at the beginning of this thing, and we had all these rumors that, hey, Walmart's actually pitching in more money, and everyone, the NIL and rev sharing, all that's going to be sunshine and rainbows. And then obviously Virginia Tech got Franklin, so we're kind of left in the weeds here. And then you go, and now there's rumors of Matt Campbell, and then a mystery Power 4 coach from the Big 12. Rumors of that coming through, and then all of a sudden you end up with Alex Golesh. So I can see how some fans might have had that hype at the beginning, but now you get stuck with Alex Golesh. But I'm look, Hog fans, if you're listening to this, it's a good hire. I mean, look at the tree he's come from. He comes from Heupel, and he's got a great offense there at South Florida. He took over a South Florida program that hadn't won more than 4 games in like 4 years, and then all of a sudden he goes 7-6, and now he's I think won 8 games. He's won 7. He has a chance to win 9 games with Florida with this next game, and the bowl game after that. No, 10 because he's got 8, 8-3 right now. So I don't think that people have really dug deep in it because you, Josh, we're kind of in the weeds with this. We know like the little nuanced things about these coaches that make them great coaches. But a basic fan just seeing, where he's coming from, maybe the record 7-6 isn't that sexy either. But we know how like that offensive mind works and how he's really built that program up, I think he's going to do really good. I mean, I don't. I kind of wish it was James Franklin. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of wish it was Matt Campbell. Not gonna lie, but if you get stuck with Alex Alex Golesh, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious too because you mentioned he's comes from Josh Heupel, was an offensive coordinator over at Tennessee, so he's got some SEC ties. Obviously, now over in the G5, he is the first head coach there at USF, I believe, to win 2 bowl games in a row. So I mean, it's something. He's definitely brought a program, like you mentioned, a program that is really nothing to something. How does that translate over if he were to be able to come over to Arkansas? How does that translate over to what he'd be able to do as a head coach in the SEC?
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to connect the dots to Lane Kiffin, but I mean, look at like what Lane Kiffin did before he got to Ole Miss. He didn't really have a great record, but then he went to FIU and did pretty good there, and then made the move to the SEC. And really, he's thrived in this era of NIL. And I think that Golesh, who took over a program like we've been talking about, who had done nothing for 4 years before he got there, and finally dipped into that, that Miami, South Florida type money, and really built, or not Miami, Tampa, and built something decent there. Now, if he comes to Arkansas, the big thing that has to happen is the boosters have to get in line, right? They have to be sold. And that's one of the things I'm worried about with Golesh. I think X's and O's, Jimmy and Joe's, he's going to be very good. But is he going to be sexy enough to get those boosters to finally start, emptying out their pockets and, paying what the rest of the SEC is doing? I mean, go back, I think it was a year ago or so, that a report came out and it talked about the recruiting staff in each building in the SEC. And Arkansas had the least amount of people in that department, except for Vanderbilt, right? And if you look at the field right now, look at the defense. Obviously, it's one of the worst in the country. It's because they don't have enough people to evaluate film to really know who's worth spending money on. So that's one of the things they've got to get fixed, and that comes from the boosters. And I just don't know if he's going to be that sexy hire enough to get those people excited. Now, he can go in there and maybe, convince some people, but I think it's going to be more of a process, and Hawk fans are probably going to have to be a little more patient than what they want to be.
With Golesh, obviously, you're getting offense. That has been the thing with him throughout his career, and that kind of feels like a trend for Arkansas for quite some time. They have prioritized that. Is there any concern about the defensive side of the ball and what that might be with him? Because obviously, like you said, that was a big issue this year. I think it's been an issue for a couple seasons now. Although I think Travis Williams, I did think, did a pretty good job a season ago. I know it fell apart this year. His defense at USF this year, they were kind of opportunistic, but throughout his tenure, they've kind of been a weak spot, and they've had some tough games against better offenses this year. Any hold up there about how that would translate coming over to Arkansas?
Yeah, I a little bit, but not as much as if they went with Eric Morris. There's a lot of people, if you talk to Oklahoma State fans, they're going to say they stole Eric Morris from Arkansas. I 100% don't believe that. I think behind James Franklin and whoever that mystery power forward coach was, I think Alex Golesh was that next guy. And you can go and you see who won that battle between Eric Morris and Alex Golesh. I mean, Eric Morris has UNT running, right? They've got probably the best offense in the country, and they held them to like less than 30 points. So I'm not super worried about it. I still like having an offensive based team versus defensive. That's just from a fan's perspective. I like to watch points scored. But I think, again, this goes back to the money. If we can get boosters to put up some cash, I mean, they can go out and find an elite DC and run with Golesh. I think there's a little bit of a hesitancy there since Arkansas hasn't been able to do it in the past, but I'm hoping that he energizes the boosters and the people who have money a little bit enough to where we can get that elite DC.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned earlier a little bit with everything kind of being broken, maybe a little too premature. Oftentimes that can happen where media breaks that out and then the coach ends up kind of resenting whatever happened there. Might not even be anything of the university's fault. The wrong person heard the news, and maybe the wrong part of the news got pushed out, and then of course this story ends up breaking out. So I mean that's still on the table, whether that happens or not. I guess time will tell. Or maybe Arkansas wasn't really going through with any of this. Maybe the case is that Arkansas ends up finding out that there is another guy. I know that it's been quite a push that Arkansas really wants to try to get some papers signed here, some kind of contract signed with whoever that coach may be here by the end of this weekend. If it doesn't end up being Alex Golesh, who are some of the guys that you would expect Arkansas to have kind of coming out there as the names? I know there's been quite a few names kind of being broken out as possible candidates, but who are the guys that you really think will be there at the top of the list if it weren't Alex Golesh?
Now, I think they really want to get it done before the end of this weekend, and that's because you got the Ole Miss job over there, just waiting for Lane Kiffin to choose between LSU and Florida, and Golesh is probably their number one guy right now, and so you kind of want to steal them from Ole Miss, and I'm pretty sure Andrew would like to not have Golesh going against them every single year too. But I think the two names that really stand out to me right now, and this kind of goes back to like Pete Thamel at the end of the game against Texas. He brought up four names: Alex Golesh, Ryan Silverfield, Kane Womack, and Eric Morris. Well, Eric Morris and Golesh, off the table no matter what here. So those other two names are the two big ones that I think of. Kane Womack is probably the next guy if it doesn't work out with Golesh, because Kane, they've been wanting to go DC or defensive oriented head coach because we've had all those offensive guys for the last few years. So just trying to do something different, I guess. But Kane Womack also played at Arkansas for 2 years back in the early 2000s. He's from Fayetteville. So there's a lot of connections there, and that's not a prerequisite by any means, but it is a plus, right? You know, a guy who's going to come in here and actually use the talent that's in state, which Sam Pittman hadn't done. And then Ryan Silverfield, I think he's kind of like bottom of the barrel. Like if we don't get anybody we want, that's like the last guy standing. And to be honest, I'm kind of in that boat too. Like he's got some appeal to him, but at the same time, he's had a lot of people, a lot of talent there in Memphis, and he hasn't like won the conference, American Conference, the entire time he's been there. And then what do you call it? You look at like Norvell, and I can't remember the guy who was there before Norvell, who went to Virginia Tech. Yeah, and they haven't done good either. So I'm just like, I want to stay away from Memphis. So those are probably the two guys. And then the coach from Kansas State, he's the next like dark horse one that I've heard about, but I don't believe that at all. So
I will say for Womack, something that's gotten kind of overlooked. I think people forget he was the head coach of South Alabama and had a 10-win season there. And like that program did not do anything before him. I mean, they did beat Mississippi State that one year. That sucked, but they did. That's about it South Alabama had done. And then since that point, they've not had a lot of success. So he's shown it as a head coach as well, and has been pretty successful as a DC. I guess going back to Golesh for a second. I mean, if he is the guy, how heavily are you pushing to get Byron Brown to get to Fayetteville?
I like him. I'm not gonna lie. He's pretty electric. There's one. I think it was against Memphis too. There's one clip that's going around right now where he's just super fast, and then he's also got that ability to like jump over people, and and he's kind of got that it factor. He's kind of like Taylen Green light, if I had to say anything about it. I don't think he throws very many interceptions, so that will be different. Won't have that next year in Fayetteville. But to be honest, I really like KJ Jackson. I'm hoping that whoever comes in, if Alex ends up not coming to Fayetteville, that they give KJ Jackson a chance. Because if you watch the last half of that game against Texas, even though it's torture, the kid had 200 something yards passing. He was around 50%, but he had a touchdown and then a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown, and that's against Texas #1 squad. So I don't know. He's a lefty, which is a little bit weird watching, but other than that, I really like the cat, and so I kind of hope there's at least a quarterback battle with the next guy that comes in if Jackson opts to stay.
I'm a lefty, so don't be making fun of him too much.
I'm not making fun. It's just hard to watch.
Well,
It's like
look,
I want to just flip the screen around.
I will say, if it's Golesh, I agree with what you said. I think it'd be a really good hire. And I know all the reasons you pointed out for why some Hog fans are not fully on board. You understand it. Like, people are going to pick these things apart. And also, you get hyped up for the idea of a bigger name. It just becomes natural if that's not the guy. But even if it's not him, I think some of those other options are quality choices as well. So we'll definitely see how this shakes out. We know they've got a few more days of waiting, I guess, until this becomes official, unless Arkansas is able to get pen to paper. But definitely a really interesting coaching search to watch. Austin, thanks so much for taking the time to come on and talk about the search. We greatly appreciate it. I know we kind of threw this on you last minute this morning, but really appreciate it. And we'll see how this turns out for Arkansas.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to be here talking some ball with you guys. And yeah, whoop pig.
All right. We will see Austin later. Really appreciate him taking the time to come and be a part of the show. We were trying to figure out who do we need to have on, and then we get all of this news about Arkansas this morning. It's like, man, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Like, we need someone to come in and talk about, because we can continue that conversation just briefly here. I mean, I think Golesh would be a good move. And the SEC experience, there's a lot of people around Tennessee, and I know Tucker's not on tonight to talk about it, but a lot of people have said he was a major player in that locker room in terms of getting the team fired up to play, played a big role in that offense. And I know, look, Heupel has continued that scheme, and it's an offense that we saw going back to the days of the Baylor. We know how that all works, but he's done a really nice job. And as Austin talked about, when he took over, USF was in a really rough place. And I know there's been I think people have been pointing out that the record against winning teams has not been great, and I'm not saying this to take a shot at Arkansas. I don't think that's how you should be evaluating the hire when it comes to, like, what are your expectations in Fayetteville? Like, I think if you see a guy who can step in and can win a lot of football games and be exciting to watch and has clearly taken over a rough situation before, to me, that's a big positive.
Yeah, I would have a pretty good feeling about hiring him in there at Arkansas. And you think of USF and what they have and the recruiting trail. I feel like it's really hard with all the Florida teams that steal talent away from each other. It's really hard to draw in your guys down there. And he's done a really good job of trying to find some of those, at times, a diamond in a rough. He's done a really good job overall. But then you come to Arkansas, I really feel like giving him more resources, giving him where Arkansas really doesn't have a hard time. It is part of the SEC, and it's kind of got that brand of its own. I think that Arkansas really doesn't have too hard of a time getting some bigger time recruits. You start to get some of those recruits in, and just enough to help you win a couple of games to show other recruits, hey, look, we're winning 6, we're winning 7, we're on our way up. You win 8 or 9, and you're moving up from there. If you're able to kind of progress that way, and I think Golesh would be the type of coach that could get them right around that range and at least start to bring some of those players in.
And look, it's a style they've had before. I mean, Kendall Briles was there as the OC a few years ago, and the way Kendall ran the offense was a little bit different, but it's a lot of the same stuff that Golesh is going to run. So, I mean, stylistically, they've had success with it before. Golesh being a guy that's recruited in the state of Tennessee. I know Arkansas has to go and get players out of that state. That helps. He's also a guy who, I think any guy who's going to run an offense like that is going to be attractive to a lot of the skill athletes in Texas, which, of course, is a big thing for Arkansas. So I think the hire would work out. We'll see if that's the direction they ultimately go. As Austin did mention, Golesh could be in play at Ole Miss. I don't think he is the lead candidate there if that job comes open. We can get into that right now because the Lane Kiffin saga continues to get crazier and crazier as we lead into the Egg Bowl here just a couple days from now. Still nothing finalized. Obviously, since the last time we were on the show, Ole Miss puts out the statement that Lane Kiffin would make an official announcement on his future the Saturday following the Egg Bowl, I guess at the latest. But it sounds like that kind of gone radio silent since then. I mean, Kiffin had a press conference where he really just did not answer any questions whatsoever about his future. Kiffin has not been tweeting anything. We've got Chris Lowe putting out weird statements that seem to take a show. Chris Lowe, by the way, who is in with Kiffin, a reporter for On3, and he is Kiffin's guy. Sort of weirdly putting out a statement that makes it seem like Charlie Weiss, the OC, was not actually worthy of being a semifinalist for the, I think it's the Broyles Award for the assistant coach of the year, pointing out that, well, it's Kiffin's offense, which is kind of weird. Players putting out statements on Twitter that are very clearly not the players' own thoughts about how fired up they are to play for the offense and play for Lane Kiffin, including a former Rebel and Caden Priestorn kind of raising an eyebrow, like, where is this coming from? It's a weird situation. I know I'm closer to it than you are, Josh, but from your read, it kind of feels like there might be some distractions going on in Oxford right now, leading into a very important game for them at a very important season.
Yeah, it really feels that way. It's felt like that way for most of the season. I think going back to the Oklahoma game when it really started hitting hard, and Lane Kiffin kind of put it to rest with that week. He just everything he said just kind of felt like, no, he's not going anywhere. And then he ends up beating Oklahoma and coming out with that thing and or coming out with that win and telling the fan base, I'm not going anywhere. And it kind of felt at that point, we're really at the end of this story. I mean, they're going to keep on probably drawing it on, and there's going to be media still talking about, yeah, but they're still going to push for Lane Kiffin. Therefore, he might still be in the mix. But then with the bidding war just kept on growing. It kept on growing. I mean, it's reportedly contracts offering out contracts exceeding $90 million. I mean, those are high numbers. I mean, currently he's getting paid about $9 million per year. The potential offers, the alleged offers that are being thrown to him are pushing over $13 million annually. So, I mean, the money is definitely an aspect. And then, of course, Kiffin's agent is definitely one of the best in the business. And for some, he's the best in the business. For maybe Ole Miss, they really don't like him. So
I don't know if anybody likes Jimmy Sexton, to be completely honest, but he's good at what he does. You got to give him that.
I think Lane Kiffin likes him because he's working out a way to get him more money. And I think that's what's so big. And then you brought up one of the biggest games of the year. And really, it is the biggest game of the year because it is going to be an emotional game for both sides, the big rivalry game where anything can happen. And, you know, we'll talk about that game here in just a little bit. And it is a game where anything can happen because of the atmosphere that goes into these rivalries. And Lane Kiffin's putting out even more of a distraction. And I almost feel like his absence of saying anything at times is even a bit more alarming than if he were just to come out and say something. But then he says something and proves me wrong.
It's so weird. And then adding, you talk about the stakes of the game. We have the College Football Playoff Committee, Hunter Yurachek, who I guess is leading a coaching search right now, and is probably not very happy about the news that came out today, given that leaking. Basically admitting that the playoff committee would potentially punish Ole Miss if Lane Kiffin is not going to be the coach there in the playoffs moving forward. This game matters a lot, and having Lane Kiffin matters a lot. And it's a really, really weird situation. And you're right, Kiffin's silence in some ways does make it a little bit worse. I mean, you're right. Every time he tweets, he makes it far worse than he could have. Him not saying anything and not giving any sort of finalized answer does create more of a distraction because no one really knows what he's going to do. And every time you look at the updates from those who are, right around the situation in Oxford, the number one thing that gets said is, yeah, none of us have any idea what's going on. Day to day, there's some ebb and flow. I know right now, I think people are feeling on the Ole Miss side a little bit more positive about him staying, just because they think he is going to struggle with walking away from a team, especially if they were to win the Egg Bowl. That's another place where people. I think Chris Lowe today reported like he thinks if he wins the Egg Bowl, he's staying. If he loses the Egg Bowl, he's going to LSU. Which it's kind of crazy to leave it up to a game like that, but it's also sort of if he loses the Egg Bowl, it kind of becomes easier to step out on because it's like, well, now Ole Miss, even if they are in the playoff, are going to be a lower seed. It's like, well, we're not playing a home game. What are we playing for? But if he wins it, you're 11-1. You're going to be hosting a first-round playoff game. If not, potentially, like they could still go to Atlanta. I think I said a couple weeks ago, I read somewhere they were eliminated. No, if they win the Egg Bowl and then both Alabama and Texas A&M lose, Ole Miss is going to the SEC championship game. So that only further complicates it more. You're talking about potentially winning a conference title and being a first-round bye, having a first-round bye in this.
Imagine the scenario where Texas A&M, Alabama, and Ole Miss all three lose, and it just feels like all the distractions got in the way between Ole Miss, that's going to be the narrative that steps out. All the distractions now kept you out of being able to make it to Atlanta. And then on top of that, now, I mean, with Lane Kiffin leaving, if they were to lose to Mississippi State and then Lane Kiffin leave, I just don't think that the committee will put them in the playoffs. I don't fault them for it either. It's definitely a sticky situation.
It's weird, and we've never seen anything like this before. But we've also never had the playoff structure the way it is currently. And I understand the Ole Miss position because what's very clear, and I think this is where I might have said this last week, but the feeling everyone seems to have, those who are the insiders around Ole Miss, and none of them are reporting this. This is just all of them, like they are kind of in agreement. They think Kiffin clearly wanted to leave or maybe still wants to leave. He sees probably LSU, possibly Florida. I know the Florida people are insistent that they are still in this, but everyone reporting on this will tell you that Florida does not really have much of a shot right now. But maybe he surprises everybody and goes to Gainesville. But clearly he views one of those jobs as like a can't miss opportunity. Like, I cannot pass on this. But he also does not want to pass on coaching his team in the playoff. He believes it is his team to coach. It's his right to coach him. And he doesn't understand why Ole Miss would not be okay with him taking another job and then coaching his team in the playoff. But if you're Ole Miss, you can't have that guy in your locker room, potentially, one, not being fully focused on your team. Two, is he telling those guys, hey, man, come on, come join me?
Well, and I think it's a really tough situation for Lane Kiffin at all because, of course, like I mentioned, there's the money that's being thrown at him. That's really hard just to ignore and turn away because he is happy at Ole Miss. I don't doubt that one bit. And I think he's content being there at this moment. And I think Lane's kind of in that boat where I really like what I've got going here and I don't want to step away. But what could I do at LSU? Even if we were to throw Florida in there, what could I do at Florida? And that has to cross your mind, and it is kind of a crazy situation. So I kind of broke down some of just how everything impacts each other with just Lane Kiffin. So if he goes to LSU, which I think seems to be like the big talking point right now, is that LSU is probably where he's going. It's either Ole Miss or LSU. I think most people kind of view it as those two. Maybe he goes to the Giants. Maybe that's still on the table. I don't know.
That's the thing. We're not even considering the NFL. Shout out to Tom Fornelli because I know On3 put out the graphic with all the experts like predicting where he's going to go, and Fornelli had the Tennessee Titans on there. It's just great.
I love it. So if he were to go to LSU, then Florida search continues. Who knows? Maybe Florida search then now impacts Arkansas. If they are able to outbid Arkansas, that's why I think another reason why they really want to secure things with Golesh this weekend. And I don't know, maybe Golesh doesn't go to Florida. Maybe he goes over to Ole Miss. Regardless, it kind of affects all of that as well. So, I mean, it could pull Arkansas into this big old circular thing, and really all within the SEC as well. If he were to go to Florida, then LSU has to turn to plan B and kind of look around wherever that might be. And I think their plan B, I've heard some saying that they're going to go after Drinkowitz. I don't know how much that would be on the table for them.
Which, by the way, Missouri trying to get an extension done as we speak. So.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe some of those rumors are true. I know John Summerall has been in the mix for really all of these teams. I think Auburn's the one that's really pushing the hardest to try to get him there. But if Lane Kiffin leaves, it becomes a big cluster there now in the SEC with Arkansas also being in the mix, Ole Miss. Who am I missing here? Auburn, Florida. And Florida. So now all of them, or regardless of where he goes, now LSU kind of also being in that big cluster of teams, it creates a mess with some of the teams and a lot of teams with big brands there in the SEC.
Summerall is the one where I think there is the most conversation about Lane having the direct impact because the rumor has been, you're right, Auburn, that's clearly their top guy. And I think he would take Auburn and be very successful there. But he was a former Ole Miss assistant who apparently very much enjoyed his time there, really likes the administration in Oxford, and also allegedly thinks that their situation from an NIL standpoint and everything that's in place there, and probably just the general pressure of coaching at Ole Miss compared to dealing with Auburn when you have Bama and Georgia to deal with every single year, the word is he prefers Ole Miss and that he's willing to wait out what happens with Lane to see what happens there. So there's an impact on Auburn because I know Golesh, Austin was talking about Golesh as a high name for Ole Miss, and I think he's probably number 2 behind Summerall. But I think Summerall is the guy that they really have circled, and I think that's who they would go for. Now, that's where Florida comes in because for the longest time, I felt like Florida was not going to go after a G5 coach, especially from the state of Louisiana, after what just happened. It sounds like Florida's getting in the game with Summerall now, and they might start pushing. If they find out, hey, Lane is not happening here, they could start pushing for Summerall, and that complicates things for Ole Miss even further because, Summerall, he may prefer Ole Miss over Auburn, but does he prefer Ole Miss over Florida? I don't know about that. So if you're Ole Miss, you want clarity as soon as you can possibly get it because that's going to impact whether or not you got a chance at these guys. And you're right. That's where Arkansas comes in because what if Summerall does go to Florida and now Ole Miss goes to Golesh? Well, where does Arkansas turn? And we haven't even really talked about LSU here. Right. Drinkwitz, maybe. Could you get Kenny Dillingham to make the move from Arizona State? I mean, I think he'd do well at any of these places. Kiffin is the domino that has to fall, and there's no clarity on where this is going.
Yeah, it has become a real mess, and it's kind of taken. It takes me back to obviously being an Oklahoma guy. It takes me back to Lincoln Riley. I'm not going anywhere, and then in the midnight hour takes off and heads out to Southern Cal, and this has been drawn out even worse than what that was, where Lane Kiffin has come out several times. I don't want to go anywhere. Well, and then all these reports are like, well, obviously he's going to explore and see what the options are. Well, if he's not going anywhere, then why is he exploring? It's so much drama that has come about with this Lane Kiffin story that it tops Lincoln Riley leaving for sure.
And it gets even crazier once Kalen DeBoer leaves Alabama for Penn State, and then Alabama's trying to hire Lane Kiffin. Yeah, it's a wild coaching search, and it's tough to keep up with, for being completely honest. But right now, there is just no clarity, so that's kind of as far as we can go with it. But there are games that are going to get played this weekend. And it is rivalry week. It is one of the best weekends of college football of the year. Obviously, a ton at stake, including within the SEC. And we're going to go chronologically through all these games, and we're going to start with the game that's being directly impacted by this coaching search because, hey, Lane Kiffin, we were just talking about how to stretch. Is his team going to be fully locked in for the Egg Bowl? It's going to play a big role. And obviously, I've got my thoughts on the game, being the Mississippi State guy, but I'll go to you first, Josh. I mean, what is your early read on this matchup? Black Friday, 11 a.m. Central Time in Starkville. Ole Miss is a 6.5, actually 7.5 point favorite according to ESPN Bet. Over under of 62.5.
Yeah, it's a game that is, man. I look at that 7.5, 6.5, depending on what sportsbook you're looking at, and I think like Vegas knows the drama that's going into this game. Vegas knows not just the drama around Lane Kiffin, but also the rivalry that there is between these two teams, and definitely a special one that I think can be overlooked at times, just because of the teams, I guess. I don't know. I guess they don't get as big of a spotlight. There are a lot of big rivalries, which we'll talk about. But then you look, I also think that the points total in this is just absurd. It's rightfully so, but it's just absurd. 62 points in this game is shaping out to be a very fun one and a very interesting one. It's at Mississippi State, right?
In Starkville.
So that's where things kind of get a little bit more interesting because those cowbells are just deafening and just different, just so much different than anything else in college football. And that mixed in with the rivalry, mixed in with all of the drama, I really have no idea how to pick this game. Now, if I'm being smart, I'm going with my gut and just saying Ole Miss wins this game. And you know what? Here's where I think I draw the line. So if Lane Kiffin is staying and he had already decided in his heart, I'm staying, I'm not going anywhere. Why would I leave a good thing? I think Ole Miss wins this thing, covers the spread just fine. But if Lane Kiffin is truly leaving and he's had other things on his mind and maybe some frustrating conversations behind the scenes, I could see where all of that distraction really would get to him. And I don't know that Mississippi State comes out with an upset, but they do keep it close. Mississippi State has been able to keep it close with their opponents really all season long. And they've been, as you can see by the stats, just very even with what they can do on offense compared to what their defense allows. And so it's been a team that has been able to hang in there with really any team on its schedule. And so, I mean, ultimately, I think that the drama and whatever frustrating conversations that have been had behind the scenes, I think it will play into maybe not necessarily Lane Kiffin. Maybe he still comes in there with a clear mind, goes to his yoga, clears his mind, and comes out there on the field. But I think the players have to be feeling the tension behind everything that's going on. And for the players also thinking, crap, what if he is leaving? No, does our season go to complete shambles, and this whole season was all for naught? And now we might have to be looking for a new place to go play for. I don't want to go play for him after he just did this to me. There's a lot that is going on behind the scenes. Then you talk about the assistants too. All the assistants that have to be drug into this. There is drama that's going on behind the scenes that I think will affect this game regardless. And so I'm going to say that Mississippi State keeps this thing close. I think if the spread's 7.5, I think I'm going to say that Mississippi State is able to keep it within that 7.5. I think Ole Miss still comes out with the win. I think they're a good program. I think they're a good team. But man, it's definitely shaping up to be a very interesting one and probably a high scoring game. What's the weather look like down there in Mississippi this weekend?
I don't think there's going to be rain. It should be cooler. There may be a chance for rain, but I think it would be later in the day if it were to come through.
I
Yeah,
know. I know there's.
Go ahead.
No, I just know that there's going to be cold across all of America. I just don't know who all's getting the rain and who all isn't. So yeah, if it's a dry game, regardless of what the temperature is, I don't think that will change it too much for this
51
one.
and sunny.
Yeah. So I think it'll be just fine. So yeah, I'm going to go Mississippi State to cover, Ole Miss to end up squeezing this thing out. Maybe a late comeback, or maybe it's the opposite, the late demise that they end up escaping there in Starkville. But I definitely think that the emotions and everything are going to play into this game.
3 years ago in Oxford, Mississippi State went up there after multiple weeks of all of the talk of Lane Kiffin going to Auburn. To the point that it got reported Lane Kiffin was taking the Auburn job. And I think Lane Kiffin was taking the Auburn job had his daughter not put together a PowerPoint presentation telling him, please don't leave. We've seen this happen before, and we have seen it had a direct impact on Ole Miss. Now, that was not as good of that was a better Mississippi State team than this one. And that also was a Ole Miss team that was not as good this time. But look, this game's in Starkville, and I think this time the pressure, or rather the distraction, is much higher than it was 3 years ago because of how public this has gotten and how obvious it is. Like, if Lane's going to give them an answer, I think it's going to play a role. Now, I will also say, like, the last couple of years, Ole Miss has had a great advantage over Mississippi State. Both those Egg Bowls were competitive games. 17-10 the last time they were in Starkville. Last year, 26-14 in Oxford with a 2-10 Mississippi State football team, and they had a first and goal early in the fourth quarter to make it a 5-point game. I ended up not scoring on that possession. But those two games were competitive when there was no reason for them to be competitive whatsoever. Ole Miss has also had close games this year against Kentucky, Arkansas, Washington State. Florida, I know they kind of pulled away late, but that was a close game throughout. Ole Miss kind of plays to the level of their competition. Now, to give them credit, they find ways to win, whereas Mississippi State has pretty continually found ways to lose. That's sort of the theme for the Bulldogs this year. But I think State's going to find a way to keep this game close. I think they will be in the game. Obviously, on my show, I did go ahead and predict a Bulldog win, but for the purposes of this one, I'll stick with the cover. I think State keeps it within a touchdown, and it's going to be a wild game for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be very emotional.
Moving over to the next game, it's a really fun slate of games on Black Friday. Number 4 Georgia taking on number 23 Georgia Tech in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The Bulldogs 13.5-point favorites, over under 59.5. Georgia Tech really seems to have fallen apart for them. Obviously getting really handled against Pittsburgh at home. I know they kind of came back in that game, but Pitt was up big. And that was after a few weeks ago taking the loss to NC State. Their playoff hopes are pretty much done because I think their path to the ACC championship game is in a rough spot now at this point. Georgia, it's kind of just sitting and waiting to see what happens to whether or not they can make Atlanta, but Georgia's also playing as well as anybody in the country right now. I apologize if I had that out of order.
I think you had it in order, and for some reason my graphics went out of order, so that's my bad.
Sorry about that.
No, you were talking the right game too, and I looked down at my notes like I've got the same game he's got, so I apologize.
No, it's all good, but I mean, I'll get your thoughts here. I feel like Georgia is trending in the right direction at the right time, and I think they'll handle business.
Yeah, Georgia's a scary team. They have been really all season long, and I just feel like Georgia has been that team that it just doesn't matter what situation they get themselves into, and I think this one will probably be, another dogfight, pun not intended, for a while. But Georgia's just at that momentum swing in the season where they're going to get hot, they're going to get into the playoffs, and they're going to be a very dangerous, very scary team to play against. And I think when you look at Georgia and what they've done this season, it's a confusing Georgia team that will blow a team out that they should probably be a little bit closer with, and then struggle against Auburn. And it's one of those things that I think Kirby just finds a way to win. And I think I don't know why this is just now coming to my head, but I think, didn't they just have a player that got arrested this past week?
They might have. I don't want to say if I don't know for sure, but they may have.
So I mean, that just tells me that Kirby's still doing things the right way down there, I guess. Because it seems like regardless of all of that constantly happening, he still finds ways to win. So, yeah, I just think I think Haynes King, he's a quarterback that I really like watching. He's a do it all back. He's one of those guys that it just doesn't matter what the scenario is. He's going to find a way that whatever it is that he has to do to help his team win, he's going to put his team on his back and just crawl into the end zone if he's got to. And he's a tough guy. I look at this Georgia team right now, and I think you kind of alluded it too, is just that they're getting hot at the right moment. They're getting hot towards the end of the season. This is a really big moment for them to just flip this entire season around and come out with a solid win here against Georgia Tech. And I think that's what Georgia will do. That spread is a little high for me. I don't think that Georgia Tech's going to, or that Georgia is going to cover that spread. I think Georgia Tech will be able to keep this one close because that's just what they've been able to do really all season long. But I think Georgia handles business, but Georgia Tech ends up covering.
Georgia Tech's defense has been rough for several weeks now, and Georgia's offense is playing really, really well right now. Gunnar Stockton's performing well. Zach Branch has really come along. The run game is starting to really pound teams. I think Georgia offensively is able to kind of have its way, and look, Georgia's defense, I think, has played better lately. Now, I will say the best offenses Georgia has faced have been able to move the football. And this Georgia Tech offense, frankly, is going to be one of the better offenses Georgia has seen. So I think they'll be able to put some points on the board early. But I think ultimately the physicality from Georgia wears them out and they pull away. I actually do think the Bulldogs get that cover. I could definitely see this being a close game through about 3 quarters, but I think Georgia does just enough to pull away and is able to cover that spread. Next game on the slate, Black Friday night. Lone Star Showdown, number 3 Texas A&M on the road at number 16 Texas, 6:30 p.m. Central Time on ABC. Aggies, a 1.5 point road favorite, over under a 53.5. I mean, look, first time back in Austin since 2010, I think would have been the last time these teams played there. Obviously, they had the many years of not playing each other. A&M is the better team. That's not a question. But if the history of this rivalry has any significance now, even though they went like 15 years without playing, we know how this typically goes for Texas A&M. And also the idea of the Aggies undefeated going into Austin, trying to cap off a perfect regular season. It feels like that could go really poorly for them. You're the most Big 12 experienced person we have here. So what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I had to look at my notes too to check. It is 15 years since these teams have played in Austin. That's crazy to think with the history behind these two teams, and the rivalry that there is between these two. I look at Texas A&M undefeated coming into this matchup. That's one of two things. That's, oh crap, we're the Aggies, we're going to do it again, or this is a Mike Elko-led Aggies team that is far different than the Aggies that we've seen in years past, which I think is the case. I think the Aggies have proven to me that they do deserve to be up there in the mix of that top 4 as they have been for most of the season now. They've got some solid wins in there. I think that Notre Dame win being one of them that really helped boost them throughout their season. They have had a favorable schedule, and so I think that's definitely helped them. I think that South Carolina scare was enough to kind of wake them up and help this team realize. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think it was enough to help this team realize we're not totally unbeatable. We need to recognize that there's teams out there that can find weaknesses and really kill us if we get ahead of ourselves too much. And then just the complete turnaround there in the second half, that's not what you're used to seeing from the Aggies. So, what felt like in the first half of that South Carolina game was about what you would expect. Like, oh, here they are. They're showing us that they're still the same old Aggies with the same old curse. This is going to be much different. Last time that they played in Austin, A&M came out with the win, all the way back to 2010. But Texas still does have that glimmer of hope of win, and maybe there's enough chaos that we can squeeze into the playoffs. Now, I don't think that's the case, but I think you have to play for that. I think you have to play for the fact that we may not make it in, but we can first of all upset our undefeated rivals and possibly try to keep them out of some things. And we can also go in there, finish the season strong. That's first and foremost. I think that's got to be your main focus. But you also just have to tell your players, hey, you're not completely out of it. You don't hold your own destiny by any means, but you're not completely out of it. So don't give up hope. You can give up hope after everything's said and done. But I think the Aggies end up coming in and winning this one. I'll say they cover that spread as well because 2.5 is pretty low at this point. But I think the Aggies end up coming away with this one with the win.
Yeah, look, I mean, I know I kind of teased this as, could Texas ruin their season? I'm going to trust A&M more. I do think it is a different Aggies team with Elko. A&M's defense has been up and down this year, but the one thing they do really have going for them is they have a really good pass rush and a good defensive front. Texas's offensive line is terrible. I think, look, the Longhorns might hit some big plays down the field. Arch Manning has played better as of late. The receiving corps starting to step up, and sometimes this A&M secondary does get burned. So Texas might get some points because of that. I think Aggie defense is able to create enough negative plays to really keep Texas from doing anything with any kind of consistency. On the other side of the ball, I know this Texas defense was hyped up a ton throughout the year. I think they've kind of gotten exposed as of late. They've seen a lot of games recently where teams have really been able to light them up, mostly through the secondary. But hey, this is a game. Marcel Reed is up and down as a quarterback, but Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion, Ashton Bethel Roman, they've got guys who can win downfield, and I think that's really difficult to deal with. And also, some of the better rushing offenses that Texas has faced have been able to run the football, and this is probably the best running team they've seen all year. So, look, I'm sure Texas defense will play as well as you could ask them to at home, just playing behind the home field and getting hyped up for the game. But I think the Aggies just are able to make more plays. I'll take them to get the win, and I think they can cover that spread.
I will say one thing that kind of stands out to me when I was looking at those stats, Texas being plus 10 in the turnover margin compared to the Aggies minus 5, thanks to that last game against South Carolina, I guess 2 games ago against South Carolina. That's if that were to play a factor into this game, I'm starting to like Texas. I think it will be a close game. I definitely think this will be a game where Texas battles, possibly feels like they might win this game until the closing moments. But I'm with you. I think the Aggies end up pulling it out.
The turnover thing could definitely come into play. It would not be a surprise whatsoever. Moving over to the Saturday slate, some of these games not as intriguing, but we still have, it could all be competitive games, to be completely fair. We'll start with Kentucky at Louisville, 11 o'clock a.m. on the ACC network. Louisville, 3.5-point favorite, over under a 46.5. What are your thoughts here?
Louisville trying to break that losing streak right now. That's just been a very odd turn of events there for them here late in the season. They may be without Miller Moss. I don't know what that looks like right now, but I was trying to read around on Louisville. Haven't watched a whole lot of Louisville, to be totally honest. And the ACC is just not exciting, so you can hate me for that all you want. But I kind of look at this game and I do wonder. Let's see, this one's at Louisville, right? Not that it really matters, but I think this one's a tough one for me where I kind of lean towards the underdog. I think Kentucky, with, correct me if I'm wrong, bowl eligibility on the line, right? So
yes.
Bowl eligibility on the line. That was something that was really hard for me. So if you look at the stats, perfectly even with points per game for and against. And I had to double check that because I was like, I think I typoed this. No, that's that's what it is. I mean, that's an incredibly even season that the Wildcats have had, and it would be even sweeter to see them go out with a 6-6 record. I think they're going to fight for that bowl eligibility. I think that means something to that program at this point in the season, and I think with Stoops trying to keep that job there in Kentucky, I think he's really going to have to pull this one out. And I don't know that he's going to go after this season with everything else we just talked about with the coaching carousel in the SEC. But it would definitely help to win this last game. I think Kentucky ends up coming out with the win here. I am not entirely impressed with Louisville, especially now, and even more so if Miller Moss is not playing in this game. So yeah, I'm going to lean on Kentucky. I think that defense kind of drowns them out just enough to be able to come away with this one with the win.
I'm right there with you. I like the Cats in this one. The vibes around Louisville are not good with the way that program's played lately. I know Kentucky's coming off a blowout loss to Vanderbilt, but overall they had been performing a lot better over the final month of the season. I do think they'll fight for the bowl eligibility here. That's a big part of it. Also, Mark Stoops owns this rivalry. I know they did lose last year, but it was like 5 in a row for Kentucky before that point. Even when Louisville has been good, Kentucky finds ways to get the win. So I think Kentucky gets bowl eligible and keeps people happy for at least a little bit longer with Stoops.
Yeah, and Kentucky's won 3 of the last 4 for sure. So I mean, it's one that I don't know. I have a hard time looking at Louisville and really feeling like they've got that fire still underneath the wing.
Yeah. So we'll both take the Cats there. Another SEC ACC battle: Clemson at South Carolina, 11 p.m. on the SEC Network. Gamecocks 3.5-point favorites at home, which I did find interesting. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too that they were favorites. Shane Beamer is actually 2-0 on the road against Clemson, but 0-2 at home, which I thought was kind of an interesting stat. And then to play into that, now they're the favorites here. South Carolina has just, I really don't have any faith in them at all. Where Clemson has at least shown glimpses of almost being good enough. Like I don't know how else to say it for Clemson, but where Clemson now kind of on that 3-game win streak, beating Louisville, Florida State, and then Furman. Florida State, Furman maybe not so impressive there on that resume, but still on a little bit of a win streak for Clemson. And last year South Carolina was able to win this battle by a field goal on the road. Clemson looking for some revenge here in the rivalry. Also, the Gamecocks are 0-6 when committing turnovers, but they're 4-1 when protecting the ball and winning the turnover battle. They have won the turnover battle overall, +7 in the turnover margin. I think that's a key to this game. If they're able to win that turnover battle, they can come out with the win. But ultimately, I think Clemson wins. I think it's a really close one, but I think Clemson comes out with the win here. I just have a little bit more faith in Dabo Sweeney and what he's got over there.
I agree. I think, look, both defenses are pretty solid. Not been elite units, but have been solid defenses throughout the season. Clemson's offense hasn't always looked great, but they've at least shown flashes. South Carolina's offense has been a train wreck all year. And I just, like last year you mentioned they get the win. Lenore Sellers literally put them on his back to get the victory. But that was also, I think, a better South Carolina team across the board. And I just think Sellers is going to have a hard time really doing that with his offensive line, allowing a pretty good Clemson defensive front to get after him every single play. I think Clemson's offense is able to make a few more plays than the Gamecock offense. You're right. Probably going to be an ugly, low-scoring game and be competitive. But I think Clemson also gets the win. It can cover that spread. But, I think winning outright is very likely also. LSU at number 8, Oklahoma, 2:30 p.m. Central Time on ABC. Not the biggest spread of the weekend, but I think the biggest spread of Saturday. 10.5-point favorites are the Sooners against Tigers with an over-under of 36.5. That tells you exactly what Vegas thinks how this game is going to play out. Kind of seems like it might be a bit of a repeat of what we just saw a week ago between Oklahoma and Missouri. Josh, what are you expecting out of your Sooners?
Yeah, I think that points total is definitely leaning towards understanding the weather. It is supposed to be kind of nasty, cold and nasty, and so definitely understand that. For Oklahoma, it's a win and you're in. You win this game, you're in the playoffs. Now, you don't hold your own destiny when it comes to hosting the first-round playoff game, and you kind of hope that some things can kind of fall in line to keep that alive, because I know that the state of Oklahoma would absolutely love it. The town of Norman would love that. LSU, they actually lead this series all time 3-1 against Oklahoma. Last year being just kind of a really upset type of win against Oklahoma. It upset Oklahoma just because they were coming off of some momentum. You beat Alabama. You're gonna try to close this season out strong, and a game that you really should have been able to come away with, and you just totally imploded. I thought the defense did enough to be able to win that game, but you have just terrible turnovers. Oklahoma has been a lot better here in the last 3 games of that turnover margin being, I believe, +6 in the turnover margin here in the last 3 games. So Oklahoma, I'm kind of tired of the narrative that Oklahoma can't keep on winning games the way that they have won the last 3 games, when they've won the last 3 games because of the way that they've won them. And calling turnovers luck when they happen consistently, I think is kind of ridiculous. It blocked 2 field goals here in the last 2 games. You're winning the turnover battle at large. I don't see how Oklahoma doesn't come out of this one big. I was actually talking to somebody earlier today over on Oklahoma at the Voice of College Football, talking to somebody about this game, and I'm kind of conflicted. I feel like this could be a game where LSU fights really hard just to close that season out, upset Oklahoma's chances at the college football playoff, and so you've got something to fight for there. I just don't think there's enough to fight for if you're LSU. Oklahoma's defense is absolutely going to be stout. They're going to be able to shut down anything that LSU throws at them, and they don't have a good offense. I don't remember what I said with what was my prediction earlier today, but I think Oklahoma comes out with a vengeance, looking to really secure that spot and to show the playoff committee that they deserve to host a game in Norman. And I think they're going to rely on the fan base to show up and show out, be loud in that stadium to show why the Palace on the Prairie is one of the best in the land. And so I think I'm going to take Oklahoma. I think I'll take them pretty big. I think they even cover that spread. I'll switch up whatever I said earlier today. Don't even recall. I'll say Oklahoma wins this thing 24-6, something like that, where they come out with a really good statement win against LSU.
These are like the same team in a lot of ways, especially like offensively. Especially, they have the same issues. Have had the same slight positives at times, but no consistency whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And defense having to do everything for them. I guess LSU probably stronger on the back end of their defense. Oklahoma stronger on the defensive front. I think again, they're basically the same team. I think it's going to be an ugly game. Overall, OU's defense is better, and they're playing at home, so I think that'll just be the difference. And look, on the other side of the ball, I'll admit I'm not a John Mateer guy. I'm not a big believer in him. And I'm not even saying this is a shot at Michael Van Buren, who's taken over for LSU at quarterback, just because he's transferred out of Mississippi State. He's a promising player. I think Mateer at least has ability to create and make something happen more than Van Buren does, and that will probably give OU enough of an edge. And like you mentioned, OU's defense keeps scoring points every single week, so kind of factor in that's probably going to happen some way, shape, or form again at this point. I'll take OU, and I think they probably can cover that spread. Like them to get it done and cap off a 10-win season for Brent Venables and basically secure a spot in the playoff, which would be a massive, massive success for them this season. Next game on Saturday, probably the most fun that this game has ever been. Number 14 Vanderbilt at number 19 Tennessee, 2:30 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. I would love to know the last time this was a ranked matchup. I didn't take the time to look that up. Tennessee, a 3.5-point favorite at home. Vanderbilt is 9-2, trying to become a 10-win team for the first time in program history. Tennessee looking for a 9th regular season win and obviously trying to ruin Vanderbilt's season and really bring them back down to earth. I want to watch this game. Like, this is going to be a lot of fun. I think there'll be a lot of points on the board. Where do you lean on this one?
This one's a really tough one for me because I agree with you. I think this is going to be a really fun game to watch. Two teams. Again, you said something about Oklahoma LSU being similar, which I agree. Vanderbilt Tennessee really feels similar. I know that the stats don't quite lean as similar as the LSU Oklahoma comparison, but the reality of these two teams, man, they are both very explosive type offenses that can just surprise you at any moment. And then you get the Diego Pavia against Joey Aguilar matchup. It really is a really fun one. And for Vanderbilt, in all reality, some playoff implications for this game. You win and you keep yourself alive in the discussion. It's not your own destiny. You're not holding your own destiny here for this game, but a win still keeps you alive in the discussion. It still gives you some sort of hope, which is crazy to think that Vanderbilt is in that situation. But they are. They're one win away from, I believe, their first 10-win season in program history.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this could be a historic season for them. And I think when all the pressure is on the line, it just feels like Vanderbilt crumbles. But I also feel the same way for Tennessee at times. When all the pressure is on the line, they crumble, which makes this one such an interesting game and makes it even more interesting adding on to just looking at the identity of these two teams. Remind me where this is in Neyland. Yeah. So
yeah, Neyland.
I think that's going to be the deciding factor for me. I think I'm going to pick Tennessee. I think this will be a very fun matchup, a very explosive, high-scoring matchup. I might even hit the over on that 65.5. But it's going to be one that I think Vanderbilt will be significantly behind in the third quarter and come out and make this game close. I think Tennessee still finds a way to cover the spread at 3.5. But I'm going to pick Tennessee there at home. I think Neyland Stadium is the biggest factor for me when deciding this game. But I'll pick Tennessee, and I think Tennessee is able to pull this one out and kind of upset Vanderbilt's historic season.
Yeah, I mean, this game's going to be a ton of fun. I was asking, like, ranked matchups. Just looking through the Wikipedia, I think this is the first time it has been a ranked matchup literally ever. There was a stretch there in, like, the late – from, like, 1939 through the early 50s where, like, Tennessee was ranked every single year, but, like, or all but 2 years. And the 2 years Tennessee wasn't ranked, Vanderbilt was ranked. So they came close a few years, but this is the first time. Yeah, I expect a lot of points. I think Tennessee defensively, they got the pass rush, but basically nothing else. And like their run defense, we saw Oklahoma, who's not been a great rushing team. They've been up and down with that. Ran for like 190 yards on them. And I know Mississippi State put up 200 yards on the ground. Florida had a good, not Florida, although Florida's top back, Jaden Ball, he actually had a fine day against Tennessee. But overall, Tennessee's rush defense has not been great. I mean, their secondary, you can attack them downfield as well. But I think Vanderbilt will probably be able to find some success there. And then Vandy's defense, I think for a lot of the year was playing well, but we've kind of seen as the season has gone along, if you can throw the football well, you can have success offensively against Vanderbilt. Joey Aguilar and those receivers can have plenty of success. I like them to get points. I'm just going to go with the home team. I'm the same way here. I mean, 3.5, I think that's close. I think I would probably take the Vols to cover, but I could definitely see it being like a 3-point final margin. It's a very, very close game, but I will also take Tennessee at home to kind of spoil the season for the Commodores. Yeah. But still, an incredible year for Clark Lee.
And I could see it coming down to literally the last second you have to kick a field goal. I could see it going to overtime and the winning team having to kick a field goal in order to win this game. But yeah, it's crazy to think of how much is really going to be built into going into this matchup for sure.
Next game on the docket. I feel like this one is going to completely fly under the radar, and it makes sense because it's in that afternoon time slot on the SEC Network. Missouri at Arkansas, 2:30 p.m. Central Time, again, on the SEC Network. Tigers are only a 2.5-point favorite on the road. And look, it's both surprising considering that Arkansas has won 2 games, but it's also not that surprising because Arkansas is competitive in almost every single game. And Missouri has not been the most impressive team as of late. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that the matchup itself, if you understand what these two teams are right now, it is going to be a fun one. The thing that really gets me is just looking at Missouri's rushing attack. I know that they weren't really able to showcase a lot of that against Oklahoma, but they do have an extremely good rushing attack that has kept this team alive, even without Bo Perbula. Bo Perbula also looked really good in his return against Oklahoma, and I don't think that I think that will get overlooked because of the overall performance there. I think he showed a lot of poise and ability coming out in that game. And I was really impressed with him, the way that he came out and led his team. They weren't able to come out with the win, but I really like him. Ahmad Hardy, obviously, the Doak Walker finalist, the big 300+ yard game really stands out to me, and I won't mention who it was against. That game with the 3 touchdowns, that's obviously one that just sticks out. A key running back that can really dice up this Arkansas defense that has just been atrocious overall, really throughout this season. They have not been very good. And also, one thing I know when we were talking to begin the show too about Arkansas, bringing up that hey, if we could find a way to not turn the ball over so much. They have been just horrible at turning the ball over, -12 in the turnover margin. They've really not got a whole lot going for them in this game, and I really don't know. Is there anything that Arkansas has to fight for at this point in the season where Missouri, they don't want to close it out with a loss? They have had a fairly good season, and they're going to fight, I think, regardless of what that is. I lean Missouri, and I think they'll cover the spread just fine. I'm really shocked that the spread is as low as it is. I understand they're on the road, but still just a little bit shocking. I'm going to go Missouri. I think they come out with this thing. I think they control the time of possession, obviously, with that run game. Lean on their two running backs with Roberts and Hardy, and just let them carry them to victory here in this game.
Could be a rainy day in Fayetteville. 48 with 90% chance of showers, which a chilly rain is not fun for anyone. But that leans into the idea of a team that can really lean on this run game. And to be fair, Arkansas does run the football pretty well themselves. But the difference is Arkansas's rush defense, while it has been better the last 3 weeks, has played 3 teams that have not been great at running the football. Every team that's been good at running the football has put up 200+ on Arkansas this year. And Missouri is very good at that. Meanwhile, Missouri's run defense has been pretty solid throughout the year. Like, they don't give up much on the ground. Also, their pass rush can really get after you, and Arkansas's offensive line is not great in protection. I think the matchup, even beyond Missouri just being the better team, I think it's a bad matchup for the Razorbacks. I will take Missouri to get the win on the road, and I think they'll cover that 2.5. Which, I mean, obviously, a 2.5-point spread, if you're picking a win, you're expecting them to cover that. But
pretty much.
Yeah, I think the Tigers are able to get this done, and Arkansas just kind of puts this season behind them, and maybe it's Alex Golesh taking over after this game is finalized, and maybe that announcement is made. This game is just absolutely disgusting. Florida State at Florida, 3:30 p.m. Central Time on ESPN2. The Gators are favored by 1.5, over under 50.5. Okay. Which like Florida State's not very good. Florida State did announce they're keeping their coach, though, and sometimes guys get fired up for that, although some players, it seems like Florida State's got a lot of players who don't necessarily care that much for Norvell, so I don't know how that's going to go one way or another. But, man, after what happened to Florida this past week, I don't have high hopes for them in this one.
Yeah, I think the recruiting class still feels like it's been a pretty good one for Norvell, though. So maybe that's what you hang your hat on. I don't know. I feel like after 2 disastrous seasons, how you don't let him go, and especially if he loses this game.
They're broke.
Yeah, I know that. But I think I would much rather just take my chances with the guy that was panhandling out on the corner of the stadium. Yeah, Florida State, they need this win for bowl eligibility. That does mean something at this point for Florida State. It really does. And, they want that win. So I think they've got something to kind of hang their hats on and something to fight for in this game. Florida fans, seems like they've been a little bit more worried about whether they're going to get Lane Kiffin or not than they have been just focusing on the task at hand, and that is just winning ball games. Florida's just been a very bad team all season long. They've shown glimpses of hope, against Texas, for example, but just nothing throughout the season really leaned towards, hey, that Florida's on their way back up. DJ Lagway has unimpressed so many that were expecting so much out of him too. And I don't know if the spotlight was too bright for him or what that could have been. Florida State also has 0 road wins this season, just 1-5 when completing less than 60% of their passes. So it's been a Florida State team who really hasn't been too great themselves, and against fairly weak opponents. I mean, not anything incredible. The ACC has not been strong. It's definitely not been one of their better years. I don't know. I look at this matchup and I really don't know which way to lean. Maybe Florida just fights and finds a way to win this game to upset Florida State's bowl eligibility. That's what I'm going to hang my hat on. I think I'm going to pick Florida. And you know what? Just for the heck of it, I'll say Florida State covers the spread. No, I'm going to pick Florida to win this game just because they want to upset Florida State's chances of making the bowl game. I agree with what the first thing you said was just that this is a nasty game. This is not a game I will be watching, and I really don't care who wins it. But I'll say Florida just for the fun of it. Let's pick what should be the underdogs in this matchup, but they aren't. So give me the home team, or I guess no, yeah, this is in the Swamp, right?
It is, yes. Yeah, I go Florida State. I think your point about getting fired up to play, I would buy into that more if they did not completely lay down against Tennessee.
True.
Like they had a rivalry game at home last week, and just I think they kind of went all out for the Ole Miss game. The Lane Kiffin stuff probably played a role in that. And since that point, I think Florida's done. FSU is still playing for bowl eligibility, as you mentioned, and I'm not sitting here suggesting the Noles are better than their record because they are definitely not. But the turnovers have played a role. They've just had some weird, bad bounces. They've had a few games where I know the Stanford game, the NC State game. You look at the yardage totals of the teams, and you look at how often Florida State was in position for points on the board, and it's like, how did you lose that football game? I guess I shouldn't trust them to fix that problem, but at the same time, look, the FSU offense has actually been somewhat productive at various points throughout the season, and I don't think Florida's defense is actually all it's been cracked up to be. FSU's defense is not super good, but they force a lot of negative plays, and against a Florida offense that seems mistake-prone, I think forcing negative plays can be a big part of it, especially but Florida committing turnovers has been a big issue throughout the year, even with the -2 turnover margin not being that terrible. Like DJ Lagway tends to make a lot of mistakes, so I think Florida State goes into the Swamp, gets the win, gets bowl eligible. Probably not a pretty game by any means, but I think they'll get it done. Last game, and maybe not the most intriguing, but it almost always turns into being the most intriguing, especially when it's played in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Number 10 Alabama at Auburn, 6:30 p.m. Central Time on ABC. Alabama is a 6.5-point favorite on the road, over under a 46.5. I mean, the Iron Bowl in Auburn, things happen. 2017, I mean, that was obviously a good Auburn team, but 2019, a crazy game, Auburn wins. Bama had 2 pick sixes and doinked a field goal that was within 30 yards to lose the game by 3. 2 years ago, Bama has to go on the wild drive in the final minute to tie it up, and then they go to 4 overtimes, trading the 2-point conversion plays in a low-scoring, ugly game. And then, actually, I guess that was 4 years ago, but 2 years ago, then you get the game with the 4th and 31 converted to win the game for Alabama. Even when Auburn's not good, if the game is played in Jordan-Hare, Auburn finds ways to keep it close. And we do know Auburn's got some talent. So where are we leaning on this one?
I do think that this game, regardless of what these two teams have done all season long, throw it out the window. This is one of the rivalries that you absolutely do that for. There's not every rivalry you do that, but when they mean as much as this one does, it definitely goes out the window. Jordan-Hare being haunted at nighttime, it seems to be a true curse there for Alabama. They've really, I mean, even when they've won, they've really struggled. They've had to complete a 4th and 34 or whatever that was to be able to win a game in Jordan-Hare. It's a stadium and atmosphere and rivalry that always lives up to the hype. I think that's why this one is such a must-watch game every single year. And it absolutely will be that way this year. That spread's sitting around 5.5, 6.5 all week, and it just goes to show how much Vegas understands this rivalry and understands what goes into this rivalry, because it's one that Alabama controlling their own destiny for the SEC championship and college football playoffs. And possibly getting that first round bye if you win the SEC championship. So they really hold their and control their own destiny up to that point. If Auburn wins, they upset all of that. And for Auburn, also securing bowl eligibility, I don't know how much that really means, but that's something to take into consideration. So I think just being able to upset your opponent, your biggest rival, and being able to completely destroy their season like they did the year of the kick six. What was that, 2012?
2013.
2013. So, I mean, if nothing more than just to destroy Alabama's season and destroy their hopes to win anything, that's the reason why I think Auburn has everything to fight for in this game, because that is all the momentum and all that they really need to really fight for that. DJ Durkin, I feel like he is a coach's or a player's coach, where I think the players really like to fight hard for him. It seems that's been the way, or that's been the case even during his interim head coach tenure here at at Auburn. Just looking at this matchup, I think it's going to be another chaotic, the kick six type matchup. I think that, don't they call it the grave digger there in 2023?
Something like that, yeah.
So it's definitely going to be a fun matchup. If the spread is sitting at 6.5, I think it's within a touchdown. I think that this one, as crazy as that seems, I think that this one is just leading up to a very hectic game. And looking at the turnover margins for both of these teams, really, both of them outstanding on the season, but Auburn really hunting for that ball. That's going to be the case in this game. They're going to find ways to turn the ball over. They're gonna study film on what Florida State and what Oklahoma did well against Alabama. They're also going to look at teams like Georgia who performed, and kept themselves tight in those matchups, and they're going to find every way to exploit Alabama. So I think Alabama probably ends up winning this game. I'm not going to go crazy and say that they end up winning, like I think all of the people on whatever Barstool show that was that I saw. I'm not going to say that Auburn ends up winning this game, but I do think they keep it close just because it is a freaky game.
If Auburn's going to win, I mean, it's going to have to be defense. I don't trust the Auburn offense to do much. Now, look, if Auburn can get something going in the run game, especially with Ashton Daniels in at quarterback, or maybe even Deuce Knight at this point, we'll see. Maybe that could be a formula against Bama. I would say the run defense has been where you can get Bama a little bit more than the secondary. Bama's secondary has been really good this year. So even with Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton, all those guys that Auburn has a receiver, I don't trust Auburn to be able to throw the football much. It's, can Auburn get something happening in the run game? Can they force turnovers? And really, can their defense just create a lot of pressure on Alabama in general? It's been a really good Auburn defense playing at home. Look, Bama's got flaws offensively. The fact they cannot run the football, the fact their offensive line gives up a lot of pressure, like, Auburn's defense will make plays in this game. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I do think Bama's defense can limit Auburn a little bit more. I think the Tide get the win, but 6.5 does feel like a lot for a road game here. I think this is going to be a down-to-the-wire, weird game. But I will take the Tide, but I think Auburn is able to cover that spread. But should be a really, really interesting game. And an interesting weekend. Obviously, like, we still don't know who's going to be in the SEC championship game. Obviously, the playoff impacts. We don't know who's going to be coaching some of these teams moving forward. It's been a really fun a year of college football. And it's going to be a fun rivalry weekend to wrap it all up. Obviously, we have a ton that we'll have to look to going into next week. We'll have a lot on the coaching search, and I'm sure we'll have some finalized answers at that point. We'll start looking ahead to whoever's in the SEC championship game and getting a final look at what's in store for the playoff. A lot of action involving the SEC here as the season winds down. Going to do it for us tonight. I hope everyone has a fantastic Thanksgiving tomorrow. Enjoy your holiday. Enjoy all the college football that's going to be gracing your TVs over these next few days. And, let's have a great weekend of SEC football. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we will see you all next time.